Mr. Clint.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning and welcome to the March 3rd, 2014 meeting of the Shawnee County Board of Commissioners. My name is Bob Archer. I serve as chair of the commission along with Commissioner Kevin Cook, who represents District 2, and Commissioner Shelley Bueller, who represents District 1. Good morning.
Good morning.
First item, please.
Item 3, consent agenda.
I have no questions. Move approval.
I would second.
Motion made by Commissioner Bueller to approve the consent agenda as presented, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item 4, new business. A, County Clerk. Number 1, consider all voucher payments.
Mr. Chairman, this morning we have vouchers that total $1,721,094.80. All of my questions have been answered. I would note that under debt service, there is $653,474.99. We also have payroll, which is under pooled cash that roughly estimates $466,000. So between those two, that accounts for $1 million of this amount. And so I would move for its approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the vouchers as presented by Commissioner Cook and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item A2, consider correction orders.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the correction orders by Commissioner Bueller and seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item B, human resources. Number 1, public hearing considering the FOP impasse.
Everybody else, I'll jump up. Sure. Promise me this will work here. Okay. It did work. I'm only slightly technologically impaired, so you'll all be patient with me here. I do have just a brief presentation to make. Again, Clint Patty, the law firm of Frieden, Unrein, and Forbes, here today on behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge Number 3, presenting our position statement, our request to the county as part of this public hearing. I was the lead negotiator, was part of a much larger team, but was the lead negotiator on behalf of the FOP right up to the point when we went to impasse, and then represented the FOP during the fact-finding hearing that we had. My purpose here today really is twofold. One, to point out some highlights from the fact-finder's decision for your consideration, and to talk a little bit about what my client believes the impact of this will have, both in terms of public safety and to make its request as a bargaining unit that certainly believes, and I certainly believe, that this bargaining unit gives a whole lot to this community and asks very little in return. I'm going to start with the end. I usually hate to give away the ending, but I'll do it today because I have a tendency sometimes to forget in my conclusions to ask for something. So let's do the ask first. The FOP's request today is fairly simple. What we would like to do when you vote on this in a few days is to send the negotiating teams back to the table under state law to negotiate a contract that honors the fact finder's decision and recommendations. And that was to have a multi-year deal with reasonable step and wage rate increases. Now, the fact finder found, if you average them out over 3 years, because the FOP was willing to agree as part of a multi-year deal to do a freeze in 2013, the rough budgetary impact is 14% over 3 years. We are not married to the fact finder's decision. As a matter of fact, would be willing to go back and negotiate as long as it is within the general terms of what the fact finder's recommendations were. And in fact, that amounts to roughly a 14% budget impact over 3 years. As an alternative, if this commission is insistent on a 1-year deal, Our request would be that that one-year deal be approved, providing our bargaining unit with its step increases and a 3% across-the-board increase in salaries. That represents roughly a third of the 14% budgetary impact over 3 years that was recommended by the fact finder, divided by 3 in a one-year deal. You get roughly 1.5% or so. That would be the step increase, and the remainder would be a COLA increase for the bargaining unit members. Don't hold me to this number, but I believe the overall budgetary impact of that one-year deal would be about $260,000. And that represents about 0.03% of the total budget. And just to remind the county, something that you all are aware of, that this county currently has over $8 million in surplus, a fact that will, I think, come into play a little bit later here in the presentation. I want to talk about facts today. Everything you're going to hear in this presentation is as a matter of fact. There is no real opinion sprinkled in here. The fact finder's purpose was to separate those facts out and make a decision. The recommendation of that fact finder was overwhelmingly in favor of the bargaining unit here, saying that the bargaining unit should in fact have a multi-year deal, and it should have these raises to help bring this bargaining unit up from where it's at today, and that is in the basement when compared to pay of its peer agencies. So the question will be asked, what can the county afford to do? We think that the proper question is, what can the county not afford to do here? We do not believe this county can continue to fund its law enforcement at the very lowest level in the region. And I'll have a slide here later that shows you what was presented at fact-finding regarding comparing the wages of the Shawnee County Sheriff's Department compared to peer agencies. We don't believe that this county can afford to continue losing experienced law enforcement officers due to pay disparity. And we'll talk a little bit about those facts that were presented at the hearing, and how actually since the hearing that the news has gotten worse about the number of experienced law enforcement officers that we're losing. And as a taxpayer, and I believe there will be people here that can speak to that today, we don't believe that the county can afford to continue paying the increased costs that are involved in replacing experienced officers with new law enforcement officers. The average amount of time it takes to get a law enforcement officer fully trained from the time they're hired is 18 months. There are costs included in equipping these folks. There's costs included in training them. All of those costs can be avoided if we simply stop losing experienced law enforcement officers due to the pay disparity. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about public safety. If you do lose experienced law enforcement officers, and this trend continues, as we believe it will, ultimately there's only two things that will occur from that. One, you're going to experience a cut in services, or two, you're going to have a lot of inexperienced law enforcement officers on the street, perhaps that aren't as highly trained, that aren't willing to accept the pay. You're going to end up with a lower quality department than you have now. And I will tell you right now, you have the finest sheriff's department in the state of Kansas. Many of those folks are sitting in this room right now. That was also presented at the fact-finding hearing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The wage study that was presented, and it was the only wage study that was presented to the fact finder, compared basically 7 agencies, most of which are in this region, one of which is not. All of which perform very similar functions to what you see from the Shawnee County Sheriff's Department. This was its conclusion, a 30-year average of total compensation. That's wages and benefits. You will note Shawnee County is at the very bottom of that scale. The difference is even greater emphasized when you look inside the numbers and compare the total compensation of, say, the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. This is per year, by the way. This is not a career. This is per year. $83,717, Shawnee County, $62,658. That is a difference of almost $21,000 per year over a 30-year career. You'll also note the difference between Wyandotte County Sheriff's Department and Shawnee County Sheriff's Department is roughly $13,000 to $14,000. That is going to come into play, at least we believe, and some very relevant facts that were presented to the fact finder and the public should know about public safety. But let's start with what I had mentioned earlier. Currently in this room is the sheriff and a lot of members of the department. I'm not sure how many. One thing I want to note about this department is that it is the only nationally accredited sheriff's department in the state of Kansas. There's only one, and they're in this room right now. What does that mean? There's an organization called CALEA that accredits law enforcement agencies all across the state. That accreditation is very proudly met by this office, but I would also like to add one other thing. In its last accreditation review back in January of 2012, the person that came here on behalf of CALEA said that this was one of the finest departments he had ever reviewed. And as a matter of fact, not only did they achieve accreditation, but the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office received an Accreditation with Excellence Award, one of only 2 law enforcement agencies in the entire state of Kansas to receive that award. So currently, when you talk about what this county receives in return to what it gives, it's getting a great sheriff's department, and that's saying that at a minimum. Secondly, there's no question that the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office and the employees within it work in a very dangerous environment. We'll talk even a little bit more about that here in a little bit with a slide that emphasizes that. These employees risk their lives on a daily basis. One thing that I've seen recently, at least in the newspapers, and people have made comments, and it's a fair comment. Why should we give raises to one bargaining unit over another? Well, the fact finder emphasized in his opinion the reason for that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but one reason is that these are the only employees that on a daily basis say goodbye to their families, kiss their children, kiss their spouse, and they can't be assured that they're going to come back. That makes them unique. And let's talk about how unique they are, particularly in connection with the community that they work in. And I really want to just focus on the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, Kansas City, Kansas Sheriff's Department, Wyandotte County, and the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office, because those 3 cities all share one thing in common. They all have a large metropolitan area at their core in which they do a lot of their work. And so they're very similar in that regard. But let's look at the 2012 FBI crime statistics for each one of these communities, because I think it's rather startling. You'll note that the place with the lowest pay for sheriff's officers has actually one of the highest crime rates. 15 murders, 42 forcible rapes, 238 robberies, 480 aggravated assaults, and its property crime is nearly 7,000. What's notable about these numbers is not just the disparity with Lawrence, Kansas, where the Douglas County Sheriff's officers work, and where they will make an average of $20,000 a year more than the people sitting in this room. The interesting thing to me is how similar it is to Kansas City, Kansas. We think of ourselves maybe sometimes as insulated from big city crime. This is not a per capita problem. Our numbers are actually almost even with Wyandotte County. That tells you something about the dangerous environment that these folks are asked to live in every day. So when we get to the question of why, as a matter of priorities, should the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office receive and the FOP receive raises as opposed to other bargaining units, I would only quote this from the fact finder's report. The fact finder notes that the record is clear that members of this bargaining unit are unique among county employees in their service and professionalism. They are also clearly exposed on a daily basis to risks far above and beyond those of other county employees, and there really is no question about that. Now, he's not here today, but I am going to embarrass him. I want to talk a little bit about my friend Sergeant Andy Dale, who provided some very jarring, close-to-the-bone testimony. I think anybody that was there to hear it certainly felt that way about what it's like to serve this county on a daily basis as part of the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant Dale has personally witnessed 3 suicides in his presence. And by the way, folks, that is not uncommon in this profession. He has had to be a part of teams that have had to remove children from home situations that I, without going into detail, just tell you are completely unspeakable. Things that we can't imagine on a daily basis. Also on a daily basis, when he goes to the mall or the grocery store or anywhere else in town that he might decide to go, Sergeant Dale faces the very criminal element many times that he has worked against, maybe even people that he has been involved in incarcerating. They're out there in the public, and these employees have to deal with that on a daily basis. I've said this many times before, and I think it bears repeating over and over again until I bang my head through a wall. There is not a single day of my professional career there's not a single day of probably just about anybody else in this room in their professional career where we will face the kind of danger that these officers face daily. That is just a fact. This picture was presented at the fact finding. I don't know if you can, how well you can read this. This actually came across on a bulletin to all Shawnee County sheriff's officers and other local law enforcement about the time that we lost two of our very finest Topeka police officers in December of not last year, the year before, 2012. You'll note that the T-shirt says, "Pigs die slow. Only good cop is a dead cop." This was a picture, I believe, taken in Walmart here in town, one of the Walmarts. Can't make it out in the picture, but these are coffins of our two fallen heroes. This just gives you an idea of what these officers face on a daily basis when they are out in the public. It is a very dangerous environment, needless to say. Now let's talk about how that public safety can be affected depending on the decisions that are made regarding pay to the FOP and pay to the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office. We're already 16 officers short in this department. We currently have about 90, is my understanding, as of this morning, but we're still 16 short. We've had a tremendous loss of experience, and I will tell you that since January 1st of this year, 2 officers have left, 2 more are giving notice this month, and another only needs to clear a background check, and he will be gone too. Just so you know a little bit about these officers without naming them by name, one of them is a corporal with years of management experience and incidentally, or supervisory experience, and incidentally is just from a personal note, a very fine officer. One of them is a crime scene investigator, which is a highly trained position. She has more than 9 years experience doing that. We're going to lose that experience. These are not people who have just been here a few years and decided the pay's not good. We're beginning to lose real experienced officers. And at the fact-finding hearing, there were about a dozen affidavits provided, and 5 witnesses that testified live, including one 21-year veteran of the department. 21 years. 9 years from retirement. He's looking for another job because he can't make enough working here. By March 2014, SSO will be short 5 more officers, and those are the 5 we reference above. We're losing them both to private sector and to rival police departments. One of these folks is actually leaving for the Lawrence Police Department. One is actually left to take an entry-level clerk position with a private company here in town. That's someone with about 9 years of experience. Talked about losing the corporal and the crime scene officer. One thing we don't talk a lot about is the cost to the taxpayer. And my understanding is there's some folks in this room, one in particular perhaps, that may want to speak here in a little bit that has some experience in this area. It's something we don't talk about a lot, but there is a definite cost when you have to replace these officers because of the immense amount of time it takes to train new officers to put them on the street. And as we say, we're already 16 short and growing. There's also a liability cost, I mean, at least a potential liability cost. Obviously, less experienced officers tend to make more mistakes than more experienced officers, and there's oftentimes a cost that goes with that as well. So these are some of the taxpayer costs that we don't often talk about when all we are looking at is dollars and cents. We're as guilty of it as anybody else, but I think that's fair to point out that there will be increased costs to replace these folks. The 18 months, obviously, I talked about. One thing we want to point out is we're not building widgets. These are not interchangeable parts that you can just pull from other places. If I am down a few law clerks or even lawyers, I could find other lawyers. I don't have a problem doing that. It is a little bit harder given the time, training, and commitment involved to find people to replace good police officers. I think the sheriff will say, and I know he has said publicly, that he has one great challenge in his department, and it's one that is going to have to be faced, and that is attracting and maintaining good, quality, experienced law enforcement officers. It is his greatest challenge, and it absolutely relates to public safety. Ultimately, if we don't tackle the pay disparity for these folks, quality is going to suffer, services will potentially be cut, and ultimately, we believe safety compromised as a result. Now, I want to talk last about these folks that I have the honor of getting to represent on a daily basis. Our theme throughout the fact-finding was that give and take. We believe we have a group that has given a lot and through the years has asked very little in return. I want to clear up one thing that I've seen publicly that is just simply not true. And these are comments that have appeared in the newspaper that talk about large pay increases by this bargaining unit since 2003. I said they're not true. They're facts, but they're not true. And here's why. I want to point out that this quote came from January the 25th, 2014, and it's been since repeated at least, actually this was a repeat of a comment from October of 2013. Anyway, it's appeared twice in the newspaper, and I think it may have even appeared most recently in an editorial. It should be noted that the two-step hike approved in October pushed the increases in the deputies' wages over the past 10 years to 76%. That exceeds increases approved for other employee groups of the past decade, a fact highlighted by Commissioner Bob Archer. Now, it is a fact. I mean, this is a fact, but let's drill down just a little bit into what we believe the real facts here. In fact, they are the real facts. That statistic is true, but it's only true for one deputy. We currently have 90 people in the bargaining unit. Only one of them has actually received that 76% increase. You may have seen her as you came in. She was actually greeting people today. The other thing you need to know is when that deputy was hired, in 2003, SSO deputies were making $13.23 an hour. I want you to think about that for just a second. In 2003, we were paying people who carry guns, who protect our civil rights and property, and who are ready to protect our lives at any moment, $13.23 an hour in 2003. Now, when I say that this is a fact, it is a fact, and this is the best analogy I've been able to come up with. It is a fact standing alone that since 2003, a single deputy has received a 76% difference in their pay from 2003 to 2014. It is also a fact that I told people at Thanksgiving that I was cutting back on what I was going to eat by only eating about 4 ounces of turkey. That fact standing alone was true, but when you know that I also ate about 3 pieces of pie, 2 scoops of potatoes, a lot of stuffing, and something my mother calls her homemade noodles, which are excellent, by the way, that gives that fact a little more texture and meaning. The fact is, this fact, 10 years and 76%, is true only to one deputy. The majority of folks did not receive anything close to that neighborhood, and we believe that this fact is actually more relevant. You have to compare what was budgeted for wages for the bargaining unit in 2003 and what it looks like 12 years later. And I think that's going to be the remarkable statistic for you. In 2003, the SSO bargaining unit had, for wages, a little over $4 million. You see that statistic there. 12 years later, for the 2014 budget, it's about $500,000 more. More than a decade, and the only increase in wages for this bargaining unit, for money devoted to wages, for the bargaining unit only, is about $500,000 more. That difference is about 12% over 12 years, or 1% per year. So in terms of what we're devoting to wages from more than a decade ago, the increase has not been anywhere close to what's reflected in the 76%. It's actually closer to 1% a year. Now, in reality, what that means is the only way you're seeing pay increases is by cutting the number of officers, which in fact is what has happened. That is really the only way that can happen when you have so little a difference over that period of time. Finally, I want to get to my conclusion. Before I do, oh, and incidentally, the $13.23 an hour in 2003 that was paid, and the increase for that one deputy, and I want to be fair about it, it's not just the one deputy. Other deputies that came on after that at the lower end of that scale have gotten larger increases. Nowhere close to 76%, but they have gotten it. That $13.23 an hour and that increase over time, which thankfully was done at a time when this commission had about $3.3 million in surplus and about $6 million the following year in 2004. That's when these increases started. We now have over $8 million in surplus, which is great, and I hope more to come, frankly. But I just point that out while we're laying out facts. That is another fact. I think at the end of the day, we have to decide, and what you as a commission has to grapple with, is what kind of community that we want all of us to live in. We would ask that you recognize and honor the fact finder's conclusion and send the parties back to the table for one last chance at reasonable increases in wages for 2015 and 2016, a multi-year deal. Alternatively, and again, just to cite from the fact finder's opinion, while the fact finder is certainly mindful of both the political uncertainty and budgetary concerns faced by the county commissioners, the fact finder is not persuaded that either factor renders the union's wage proposals for 2015 or 2016 unreasonable. Rather, it would seem that by deferring any potential wage increases until 2015, the bargaining unit's proposal permits the county greater opportunity to plan and budget for increased wages. And that's why, in terms of a multi-year deal, the FOP has been willing to take nothing for 2014. Put this off, but let's make sure we have some built-in increases to help close that gap. And incidentally, the wage increases proposed, if you will remember the chart, will not vault this bargaining unit to the top of that chart by any means. It just kind of puts us a few notches above the basement, which is really what we're looking for here. And of course, alternatively, if you all decide that a one-year contract is appropriate, we would ask that that contract come with steps and at least a 3% cost of living increase, again, to help move this bargaining unit out of the basement, to keep it more competitive, and to stop the flow out of good officers that are leaving now on a daily basis. We would ask that you stop this agency from sliding into mediocrity. We believe that losing good officers ultimately will translate into that, not just in terms of losing accreditation, but losing the quality that we have now. And my final comment would we ask that you would honor these employees in doing so, those same employees that, different from any other employee here, risk their lives on a daily basis. Before I conclude, I would like to thank members of my negotiating team, particularly Chief Steward Darren Marr, Chief Negotiator Brad Metz, and so many more that are in the audience today. A lot of hard work. I also want to thank the county's negotiating team, John Thummel, Janet Traxler, the sheriff, the Major Bloom, Sheriff Jones, and Michael George, who's retired from the county now, but was former county counselor and very helpful in the process. Negotiating is never easy, and we all recognize that, and I appreciate that work. And the last person I'd like to thank is Jim Crowell, who represented you all very well in the fact-finding, and in a profession full of unprofessional people, Jim is a real pro. So I wanted to make sure that got out publicly. And now that with my endorsement, I've made sure that these folks will probably all be fired, I will end and stand for questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Patty? Thank you.
Okay, I have copies, by the way.
Thank you.
Are there others for public comment?
Good morning, Commissioner. Herman Jones, Sheriff, Shawnee County. Excuse me, still dealing with a little bit of cold, just like so many others here. I come before you basically to say I understand you have a challenge that is put forth for the best benefit of the citizens of this community, in this county, and that you have to make some difficult decisions. And I couple that in that I too have been challenged to make some difficult decisions as well. Some of these are born to us prior to us taking position. Any one of us, we're in a position here, but we have to make some decisions right there. I obviously come with the venue of public safety. I would just want you to take some strong consideration when it comes to public safety. I've been in this now for 30-something years, and just like many others that are in this room here, are dedicated their lives to public safety. And with that then, from the eloquence of Mr. Patty of giving a presentation there to give the side of the bargaining unit, it would be incumbent on me to also understand that what we're dealing with are some challenges. I have publicly said that one of my biggest challenge is attaining and retaining personnel. We are in the people business. Public safety is dealing with people. And for that, we can come up with efficiencies, which we are working on. We've come up with some different ideas. We're working constantly of trying to make some efficiencies of this agency to serve the public. But when it comes down to it, the bottom line is it still deals with people dealing with people. My challenge is having the people in this agency to deal with the people of this community. Right now, and I know Ms. Patty was talking about X amount of people that have left for whatever reason. Some are leaving for, as I got to admit, that are leaving to some aspirations to another position or whatever it is. But I've got to say that when I have a sit-down, an exit interview, compensation is one of those that's high mark on why they, or a reason why they're leaving. And I'm sad to say, just prior to me coming over here, I received another letter of intent to resign, to go to another agency. This becomes a real matter. I think I've said this before. When people call our communications, generally it's not just for asking for directions. It's because of an emergency in their life. And I would pose that to anyone in this room. When you call for the emergency, you want a response, and you want a response now. My problem that I have, or the issue that I have, is having the people to respond adequately for that. Right now, when we are drastically low, I think it's been said that we've got 16. We're, from the allocated personnel that we have, we're down 16 officers. And if this one comes through, we'll be 17 officers. The problem with that is we're stretched pretty thin. And I know that when we talk about county employees, we want to be fair and equitable and those type of things. I think it's quite obvious that our officers are not the run-of-the-mill type of individuals. Two reasons. One is they're not in an office to do the work of the people as we have. We have plenty of dedicated employees in this county. We really do. But yet the deputies and the individuals and officers that work for the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office are unique. They're trained. They take an oath in office. There's a code of ethics that they must follow. And basically it talks about the honor and integrity and trying to have a life that goes beyond reproach when we're dealing with our community. So when we're dealing with that and trying to attain people to come in, I have a difficult chance of bringing individuals when they're going to other agencies or they're not even attracted to Shawnee County. I think any one of us in here have a great pride of this county. These individuals that work for Shawnee County are very proud individuals. They enjoy what they do. But at some point, it just takes a toll on them. I think I made the comment in the newspaper, it just really comes to a point of how much do we really want of our officers? We're getting a pretty good deal. I think it's just shown. Particularly when we're a certified agency, nationally recognized. And for the value that we get, I think that's a pretty good deal. But can we do better? I hope so. But I know that's a difficult decision for you. I enjoy working for the people of this county. I've dedicated my life to law enforcement, and so have so many in here. The officers, communications, even the clerical, have dedicated themselves. It takes a toll on individuals when they come to work and realize they're putting themselves on the line. That's a choice they've made, and they've made some difficult choices. I would ask that you take this in strong consideration of honoring the people that work for this county and put their lives on the line day in and day out. Any questions?
Questions for the sheriff? No. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak here this morning. My name is Kurt Young. I'm the owner and manager of the Super 8 at Forbes Landing on South Topeka Boulevard, and I reside at 6210 Southeast 61st Street in Tecumseh. I've reduced my comments to writing in an effort to conserve time and also not be inclined to chase any rabbit trails. So I'm going to try and stick to my written comments as closely as possible. You've heard from the FOP lawyer, Mr. Patty. You've heard from the sheriff. I want to give you some input from a tax-paying businessman's position in the county. I'd like to be able to stand here this morning and tell you that I've never had any reason to have any dealings with any law enforcement at any level. Some will know better than others that that would be a bold-faced lie. As a businessman at this location for nearly 9 years, I have had my share of opportunities to work closely with representatives of the Shawnee County Sheriff's Department. Having a personal passion for law enforcement, but more importantly, understanding the need for professionalism and commitment, I respect completely the findings as presented in this fact-finding document. As long as we have individuals out there that will continue to test the boundaries of the law, we have to do everything in our power to have a law enforcement agency that is best trained and prepared to meet the daily demands with which they are confronted. The worst thing that can happen in today's environment is to have a department that is not fully staffed nor fully prepared for those demands that will be placed upon them on a daily basis. Having had some very personal experiences with a need for support from this department, I think it would be foolhardy not to give them every opportunity to be as prepared and trained as they need to be. In fact, from a purely business perspective, I would strongly encourage you to support and approve the findings in this document. The advantages that we as a taxpayer gain through the approval of these findings in building a department of professionals for the future, in my mind, far outweigh any perceived negatives that may exist. In fact, I am truly having difficulty in seeing why there is any doubt that these recommendations should be approved. My experiences with the individual representatives of this department have always been positive, and the individuals that I've had the opportunity to deal with on a professional basis merit the best alternatives possible for the development of a continued, well-trained, and professional department. And that pretty well sums up my feelings and my thoughts, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning.
Thank you,
Any
Mr.
questions?
Young. Questions? Thank you, Mr. Young.
Hi, my name's Darren McCall. I'm a resident in District 1. I want to take this opportunity. I've been made aware of, and very beautifully and eloquently so, of the differences and disparities between the two departments, mainly Douglas County. My business transcends into Douglas County, so I get a chance to visit both sides of the line. You guys have a top-notch group of gentlemen here in the Sheriff's Department, and I'll try and make this brief. 3 years ago, we had a young lady show up at our door, approximately 2:40 in the morning, bruised, bleeding, incoherent. I had my wife call 911. Sheriff's deputy responded instantly. Her story was she didn't know what had happened. You know, she looked like she literally had the hell beat out of her. And the sheriff deputy spent some time, talked to her. Lo and behold, she'd been in a car accident. It's about 12 degrees now. Two other units respond instantly. They find a vehicle in a ditch 4 blocks away, and her friend laying in the ditch, not in winter dress apparel, that close from dying from hypothermia. These officers, the way he questioned her He had her in my home. I had no idea that she was in a car accident. But the professionalism of how he dealt with her was absolutely phenomenal. And there's a life saved through an officer's training, his diligence, and caring. You know, my dad told me a long time ago, you get what you pay for. And it's really true. You guys have a great product here. It's time to pay for it. I rarely have dealings with them, luckily. But in Douglas County, that's a fine program there as well. But you guys really have officers here that deal with a lot more. My business in Douglas County and in Shawnee County, there's a big difference in just the environment of the two cities. These guys deal with a lot more than what I see my business have to deal with in Douglas County. I mean, you guys have a great product, and as a consumer, I think it's time to pay for it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commission. My name is Chris Margle, and I'm a product of the Sheriff's Office. I left the Sheriff's Office in 2006 because I wanted to make more money. I wanted to have a better life for my family. I've seen firsthand what not having properly trained men and women in law enforcement can do for a community. For the past 7 years, I've worked internationally for the State Department. It's a priority. Number one, it should be number one priority, is making sure that you not only attract the best and the brightest, train them properly, and then retain them for the duration of their careers. And so I would hope that you take under consideration seriously this issue that is tabled this morning. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner. I'm Kyle Boggs. I'm a taxpayer, local businessman here in the city of Topeka. I don't have a lot of eloquent stories. I don't have a lot of facts and figures to go off of. My business, I have an office here in Topeka. I have an office in Lawrence. I have an office in Lee Summit. I have an office in Lenexa, and I also have an office in Edmond, Oklahoma. All that being said, those are some similar areas of the country because we're in the Midwest, but they're also different by population density, blah, blah, blah. The thing that I've noticed the most here in our county is the continual cycle of people being brought in and trained and then leaving to go to other agencies. As a business person, my situation, if I'm in that sort of turnover that we keep seeing here within the county with our deputies and officers of rank, however you say that, if you get into a situation where you're continually losing people with that valuable training and that mentality and the ability to foresee a problem without having to think about the problem, you're losing money and potentially we're losing lives. And as a taxpayer, I choose to live in this county. As I said, I've got other areas of the country I could live. I wanted to stay in this county and raise my family. I'm just asking you all to do the right thing for our county and for our citizens and for the people that are protecting us every day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Chad Taylor. I'm your elected district attorney, and I heard that this meeting was going on this morning, and I wanted to weigh in with just a little bit different perspective. One of the trends that we're seeing, and I'm not going to be repetitive, but for a basis, the sheriff talked about the number of deputies that we have lost that have left. In addition to that, I wasn't aware until I walked in this morning that another one had resigned when the sheriff had said that. One of the things that's important for our operations and the ability to bring justice for our citizens is the continuity of having deputies that work in the sheriff's office, that are well-trained, that understand the drill of showing up to court, testifying, writing good reports, and doing and conducting a thorough investigation. When individuals leave their employment with the sheriff's office, we sometimes find them in the wind. And what I find to be problematic about that is that when they do and they leave, trying to track them down, having to pay to bring them back, to have them testify, in addition to some of those cases not being able to be prosecuted because we can't track those folks down. Ultimately, that leaves folks in our community a little light on the justice that I think that they deserve. So for what my 2 cents are worth, I stand here before you in support of what the deputies are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Dick Barta, former sheriff, a retired law enforcement officer, but also a citizen here in Shawnee County. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity for me to come and share some information with you from my perspective. And I would tell you, over the years, I've dealt with many issues with the FOP. Some we agreed to agree, and then some we agreed to disagree. This is one today that I'm here fully supporting the FOP. And here's the reason why. It's not easy being a law enforcement officer. And it's not easy to become a law enforcement officer. Now, I speak from the sheriff's office side, and I was with the Highway Patrol for 29 years. To become a law enforcement officer, I know of no other profession that requires such an extensive and exhaustive investigation to become, or selection process to become a law enforcement officer. First, you have to go through a physical agility test, driving test, written examination, polygraph examination, psychological evaluation, a complete thorough background investigation, and when they come before you for an interview, you probably know as much about them as they know about themselves. Go through a drug screen as well as a complete physical, vision, hearing. So what you're looking for in these individuals is somebody that has the physical and mental abilities to take on the duties and responsibilities of a law enforcement officer. And probably the most important characteristic, the most important ingredient that you're looking for in a law enforcement officer as an administrator is that of integrity. Somebody that does the right thing when nobody's watching. They do the right thing regardless of what the consequences are. And if you have individuals in your agency, rank and file, that have a high degree of integrity, you eliminate, well, at least greatly reduce the possibility of corruption in your agency. My experience has been, once you go through all these examinations, is that maybe 2 out of 10 applicants that apply for a law enforcement position are actually seriously considered for employment with a respective agency. Once you have selected an individual, you send them to training required by state law. In the case of the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office, they go to Hutchinson at the academy there, the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center. That's 14 weeks. When they graduate from there, they come return and go through a field training officer program. And they're evaluated, their progress and performance is evaluated daily. They're on probation for the first 18 months after they're employed with the sheriff's office. Before you start receiving a return on your investment, I feel that individual has 2 to 3 years with the agency. And you have invested, when you consider the time, the training, the equipment, the salary, and the benefits, you have well over $200,000 invested in that individual for the first 2 or 3 years they're with the sheriff's office. When it comes to applicants, oftentimes the sheriff's office is competing with the Topeka Police Department, Kansas Highway Patrol, Kansas Lottery Commission, Racing Commission, and even the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. So to put everyone on the same playing field, and I've been saying this for years, I believe that the sheriff's office needs to have a competitive compensation package approved by the commissioners. If you looked around this winter with all the accidents that we've had and the problems we've had with the emergencies, you'll see that the Kansas Highway Patrol, the Topeka Police Department, and the Shawnee County Sheriff's Office are all out there working together, doing the same work side by side. So it's my belief they should be equally compensated as well. I would like to say, Commissioners, you have one of the finest sheriff's offices in the state of Kansas. And they've worked extremely hard over the years to overcome some adversities. They provide a great service to this community, and at times, as you well know, sometimes that service can be extremely dangerous. And I know this has been said before, but lastly, they are, as far as I know, at least when I left the sheriff's office almost 2 years ago, they were the only sheriff's office in the state of Kansas that's fully accredited nationally by the CALEA on accreditation for law enforcement agencies. And that's a commitment. That's just not the sheriff or the under sheriff or management. It takes everybody in that sheriff's office pulling together to be an accredited agency. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. But if not, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to share this information with you, again, from my perspective.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there others? Questions or comments, Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, if we could have perhaps Mr. Thummel give us at least a breakdown publicly as to where we proceed from here now that we have had a public comments.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Thummel, Director of Human Resources. I believe you need to close a public hearing, an official vote, and then we need, from this point forward, we would issue a unilateral contract by resolution.
And is that something that would be done today, or would that be done, drafted, and then voted on at a later time?
It will be drafted and then voted on at a later time.
But as far as the actions today, the only action today would then be closing the public comment.
Yes, sir.
Is that a motion? I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second the motion, but I do have a couple comments. Just appreciate hearing from all of you here in this room, and we've heard from several through emails and phone calls, and I do appreciate all the comments. We'll take those under consideration and as we go forward with our actions.
Motion made by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Bueller to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
I might have a question. When would that be on the agenda?
believe it is at your discretion when it is on the agenda. We could probably have it ready for Monday's agenda, perhaps Thursdays if you wanted to put it off. It kind of depends on what your time frame is.
We don't have a meeting this this Thursday.
No, I meant Thursday, meaning Thursday
A week.
next week, 13th, I believe. Yes.
I guess my point being, whenever it is on the agenda, that we make sure that we let all know, or all parties know that it.
That's
it is
correct.
on. Okay.
The current timetable is to have it on next Monday's agenda.
And that would be my preference, Mr. Chairman, if possible.
Yeah, mine as well.
And we'll do. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item C, District Court, number 1, consider approval of request to purchase 22 scanners in the amount of $19,493.32.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kathy Lenhart, Court Administration. As I noted in my memo, I have reviewed this purchase with Betty Griner before bringing it to you, and there are attachments including 4 quotes. And it turns out that the one normally we would use would be the state contract, but there was one less, so that's what we're using. Do you have any questions about the purpose of these scanners? The short version is it is one more cog in a very slowly moving wheel taking us toward paperless courts. So,
Are there questions or comments for Kathy?
I appreciate the district court bringing this to us for our approval and review. I have no questions. I would move for approval of the purchase of the 22 scanners.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you,
Kathy.
Commissioners.
Next item.
Item D, Kansas Expo Center, number 1, consider requests for capital expenditures in a total amount not to exceed $33,841.66 for the following. A, replacement of leaking fuel tank on a New Holland LX 565 skid steer in the amount of $2,102.38. B, replacement of failed agitator motor and digital controller for commercial popcorn popper in an amount of $595.34. C, overhaul ice plant compressor number 1 in an amount not to exceed $19,000. D, reimbursement for the $1,000 deductible for the insurance claim for the burst coupler in AHU number 3. E, purchase of underground storage tank fuel monitoring system in an amount of $7,960. F, replacement of a 3-way butterfly valve on AHU number 1 in an amount of $708.94. G, emergency repairs to the southwest overhead door in Exhibition Hall in an amount of $2,475.
Good morning, Commissioners. H.R. Cook, Kansas Expo Center. There's a pretty long list there, so I'll be more than happy to answer any questions on any particular item. As you'll notice, there's no fluff in this list. It's repair items that is chewing into our capital expenditure fund to the point of $33,841. So,
Are there any questions concerning the capital expenditures for Mr. Cook?
Just note that this appears to be an ever-long list that we keep coming back to, and the list may be shorter of what does work than what we haven't been replacing.
well, and eventually we'll have replaced everything. But in looking at our list versus what we were allocated for capital, I'm anticipating probably coming back to the commission for funding in July or August. So just kind of a forewarning.
I'm sorry.
Did you move approval?
No, I'll move approval for the
Okay.
capital expenditures
I'll
of
second.
$33,000.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook to approve and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, HR. Next item, please.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item E, Public Works Solid Waste, number 1, consider approval of request to rescind the award for a bid granted to Shawnee Mission Ford for a solid waste service truck and award the bid instead to Olathe Ford in an amount of $74,444.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Block with Public Works and Solid Waste. This is a solid waste item. Several weeks back, we had taken bids for an equipment service truck for the solid waste department. After the bids were received and reviewed, it appeared that Shawnee Mission Ford was the lowest bidder. So we awarded the bid, or it came before the commission. Commission took our recommendation and awarded the bid to Shawnee Mission Ford, and we issued a purchase order to them. Shortly thereafter, they had contacted us and said they had gotten the purchase order for the truck body, but had not received one for a crane that was included in the truck. And we had indicated to them that the price they submitted was to be the truck and the crane, all inclusive. It was their understanding, based upon a couple of addenda that had been sent out during the bidding process, that the crane and the truck body were separate bids, and that those two costs should have been put together. So we spoke with the counselor's office, got their opinion, gave them the bidding documents that we'd received. Counselor's office had indicated that they could understand where there was some confusion on Shawnee Mission Ford's bid, and that the cost of their crane from the one addendum should have been included with the truck body. In doing so, that makes them not the lowest bidder. So they had requested that we either pay them the additional cost of the crane or have their bid withdrawn. Since they would no longer be the low bidder, counselor's office felt it was appropriate to let them withdraw their bid, and then we subsequently contacted the second, or who we thought was the second low bidder, which was Olathe Ford. They indicated to us that they would, verbally would indicated that they would honor their bid of $74,444. So that was, I'm here before you today requesting that the bid from Shawnee Mission Ford be rescinded and the offer now be awarded to Olathe Ford in that amount. This amount of $74,444 is still lower than what we had estimated this piece of equipment to come in at, around $85,000. And as you recall, there was a limit for solid waste capital equipment for trucks that we had limited at $600,000. Even with this increase, we'll still be below that $600,000 amount. So if there's any questions regarding this, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Are there questions for Mr. Block?
If there's not a question, I would motion to approve the rescinding and awarding, but I would note that I find it interesting that Shawnee Mission Ford, Olathe Ford, a lot of our purchases are to out-of-town businesses, and even though we're opening it up to local dealerships, I know that we do quite a bit of business with Shawnee Mission Ford and Olathe Ford, and so
I agree. I've noticed that too. I don't have a reason why the local dealerships do not submit bids. I really don't know why they don't.
So, but I would move for approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item E2, consider approval to expand the scope of contract C31-2014 with ACE Pipe Cleaning, Inc. to televise, clean, rate, and provide GIS services for Lake Sherwood Sanitary Sewer Collection System to include sewer district numbers 2 and 6 for an additional amount of $26,379.60.
Commissioners, Tom Block again with Public Works and Solid Waste. This is the Public Works item. A couple of months back, we had taken bids to do some sewer televising, cleaning, and GIS services for a large portion of the sanitary sewer system around Lake Sherwood. That contract was awarded to ACE Pipe Cleaning. In further discussions, there are also, the county also is the ownership of a few lagoon treatment systems in the county. ACE Pipe Cleaning had indicated that the prices that they bid for the work being done around the Sherwood area would be the same if we wanted to add these lagoon systems to the project. So there would be no additional mobilization costs. The prices we received, we felt, are very good prices. So as our request before you today is to add the cleaning and televising and GIS services for two of our lagoon systems. One's number 2, which is near the Indian Creek subdivision, near Northeast 54th and Indian Creek Road. And the other one is for the number 6 lagoon system, which is North Holiday subdivision, located at Northeast 35th and Rockaway Trail. The price for the number 2 sewer lagoon system is $20,114. The price for the number 6 lagoon system is $6,265.60, for a total of $26,379.60. The cost for these additions, each of these lagoon systems has their own funding mechanism through its users. So even though we'd be adding these services, the portion for the Sherwood portion would come from the Sherwood Sewer Lagoon Fund. That for the number 2 lagoon system would come from the Sewer Lagoon number 2 system fund, and the portion for the number 6 lagoon system would come from the number 6 lagoon system fund. If this is approved, this request here is just to add on to the scope. If it is approved, then we will come back at a future date with an actual change order, change the contract documents. So if there's any questions regarding this, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Are there questions for Mr. Vlock?
I have none.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Archer and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item E3, consider authorization and execution of contract C83-2014 with the City of Topeka for traffic signal maintenance at a cost of $19,800.
Commissioners, Tom Block again with Public Works and Solid Waste. This is the Public Works item. As you recall, last week the Commission approved the payment of an invoice to the City of Topeka for this type of work for 2013. This contract is an extension or revision of that contract of which we paid for those services. What we revised here was essentially to make the payment on a per intersection basis, or traffic signal maintenance on a per intersection basis. This way, it will make it much easier. It will easier to budget because we have 9 right. Currently, we have 9 intersections that have traffic signals. One of those will be going away later this year when we replace the one at North Topeka Boulevard and North 46th Street with a roundabout. But each intersection will be done on a lump sum basis as opposed to time and materials. We believe it will be easier to budget and easier for them to invoice us and make payment by going to this route. And the way we came up with the amount of how much to charge, they were to charge per intersection, was it was the average of the last 3 years. And so that's why we came to the $2,200 per intersection. If there's any kind of emergencies, like for instance, earlier this year we've had someone run into one of our traffic poles and damage the traffic mass, that would be in addition to these general services. But it's our recommendation that we approve this contract, and this will put us in a position to continue these services into the future, in our opinion, in a more streamlined way. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Questions or comments?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the contract by Commissioner Bueller, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please. Thank you, Tom.
Item F, Parks and Recreation. Number 1, consider authorization and execution of contracts C84-2014 through C102-2014 for rental of 19 ice machines at Parks and Recreation facilities at a cost of $12,854.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Knight, Parks and Recreation. There are numerous contracts in front of you. These are for the rental of ice machines. We use those primarily for our different concession stands in our facilities. We do factor the cost of this rental into when we set our prices and those type of things. Be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Questions for John Knight?
I do not. Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Cook to approve, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item F2, consider approval of request to solicit bids for weekly mowing services for 15 parcels with a total of 28.37 acres in an estimated cost of $27,000.
Commissioners, this is a similar list as to what we put in front of you last year at about this time. These parks are, by the size and by the location, more convenient to where there are private industry people already out doing lawn care in some of those areas. We think it's less expensive than us putting people, staff into trailers, hauling equipment all over this part of the town to take care of. I will mention that as part of the strategic master plan, we are looking at a facility maintenance plan, a grounds maintenance plan, in which you're likely to get some proposals back from that that will more further develop the contracting of some services out in those areas. Be happy to answer any other questions you may have. There is no grass growing today, but we expect it to begin growing soon.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Bueller and seconded by Commissioner Cook to approve. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item F3, consider approval to submit an application for a grant to participate in the Kansas Forest Service Community Protection in Priority Landscapes Program.
Commissioners, this is an opportunity to make a project that we currently have going on happen faster and less expensive to the Shawnee County taxpayers. We have partnerships going on the Burnett's Mound, Skyline Park, working with the West Star Green Team, clearing the woody vegetation off of the mound. With that, we have found an opportunity with the Kansas Forest Service to possibly work with them to stretch our dollar even farther. Be happy to answer any other questions you may have. Could be a benefit of up to $40,000, but we don't know what that amount will be.
Just one question. When will you find out if you received the grant? You know?
I don't know. I would suspect soon. This is work that we would already be doing on Burnett's Mound anyway. This is just be stretching our dollar and having us be able to accomplish more.
But it's for this year?
Yes.
14, okay. Move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the application for grant by Commissioner Bueller, seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, John. Next item, please.
Item G, Counselor, number 1, consider authorization and execution of Contract C-103-2014, amending Contract C-334-2004, an interlocal agreement relating to financing countywide infrastructure development and economic development.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rich Eckert, Shawnee County Councilor. As you know, we went out, we being JADO, went out to bid to RFP for the economic development component of JADO. And in that RFP, we've spelled out in there that we could award up to a 3-year contract. That, however, conflicts with our existing interlocal that limits our independent contractor contract to 1 year. So this is an amendment to that interlocal that allows us to have a contract for up to 3 years. And this language has already been submitted to the city attorney office, and they have checked off on it, so we know we're good there. So with your signature, we would send this over to the city manager and getting this processed further, and that would give us the variability to do what's best for what you think's best when that RFP comes back and we have to make those decisions.
Questions or comments?
Motion to approve the amendment to the interlocal agreement.
I'll second, and again, the only change is 3 years.
That is it.
That's all
Correct.
changed.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made to approve by Commissioner Cook and seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, sir. Next item, please.
Item H, Commission, number 1, consider approval of resolution number 2014-18, affirming support for remaining Bourbonnais Creek to Bourbonnais Creek.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jonathan Berzon, Assistant County Counselor. As set forth in the memorandum, the Board of Geographic Names has asked for our input on the renaming of Bourbonnais Creek to Bourbonnais Creek with 2 N's this time. And so the resolution would just express our support for that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, John. Can I speak?
Absolutely, Commissioner.
Thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate Mr. Berzon's work on this, but then we also have John Bursaw, who is a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, who is in Kansas. They have 2,600 members in Kansas. And so this came to my attention through him, and these gentlemen have helped us get to this point, because apparently you can't just add an N, you have to officially add it, so. I don't know if John wants to make any comments anymore.
Would you like to make a comment, sir?
Well, what I thought was going to be an easy project.
Yeah, it hasn't been.
Bourbonnais Creek is in Shawnee County, 2 miles east of St. Mary's, right almost on the border. Approximately 2 years ago, they took down a bridge that had Bourbonnais Creek with one end signage and built a new bridge. So the members of the descendants of the Bourbonnais family came to me and said, can we get our signs back? So I contacted first Potawatomi County, wasn't their bridge, it wasn't Shawnee County, talked with KDOT real quickly. Eventually, they agreed to replace the signage and changed their criteria for signage, by the way, to accommodate this request, but KDOT did not have the authority to correct the spelling of the name. And it can only be done by the U.S. Board of Geographic Names located in Reston, Virginia.
Yep. So there you have it.
So I have, with this document, I have a stack about this deep that will justify adding an N to the name Bourbonnais. Peter Bourbonnais, by the way, ran a sawmill and a toll bridge over the creek during the period of the Oregon Trail. And he died in 1861, and to our knowledge, may have been the last Indian buried in a tree. But that's a little bit of the history of Shawnee County.
And very interesting. Thank you.
Mr. Bursaw would know the history. He is actually the newly elected District 4 legislator of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation in Kansas, so.
Thank you, Shawnee.
You're welcome.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Motion? I think that would be
I'll
yours.
move to adopt the resolution.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made to adopt by Commissioner Bueller and seconded by Commissioner Cook. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0.
In addition to the 2,600 in Kansas, there are 650 in Shawnee County, tribal members.
Yeah.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item H2, consider canceling the April 14th, 2014 commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve cancellation of the meeting.
I'll second. We will be canvassing, that's my understanding,
Yeah.
correct, for the Topeka Public Schools.
Yeah, the 501.
Yeah.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. Next item, please.
Item 5, administrative communications.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Sturban, Shawnee County Emergency Management. I want to remind everybody that Severe Weather Awareness Week started today. And even though it's so cold out, tomorrow is the scheduled statewide tornado drill where at least people don't have to go outside, but we will be asking everybody to participate in the exercise tomorrow at 1:30 when we sound the sirens. Unless, of course, it's windy and cloudy tomorrow, we won't, but we're still wanting everybody to participate at 1:30 tomorrow to do the statewide tornado drill. So, and later in the month, we'll be announcing when we're doing our severe weather awareness presentations in Shawnee County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Tom Block of Public Works and Solid Waste. Since there is no meeting Thursday, I believe, I wanted to announce that the household hazardous waste facility will be open this Saturday, with it being the first Saturday of the month, and we open from 9 to noon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Other announcements? Commissioners?
Have none.
Next item, please.
Item 6, executive session.
There is a need for an executive session. Accordingly, I move that we adjourn into executive session for the following matters: personnel matters of non-elected personnel, consultation with an attorney for the body or agency which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, and matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the represented or representatives of the body or agency. No action is anticipated, and the motion is for a 30-minute period.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Archer, seconded by Commissioner Bueller. All in favor say aye, opposed say no. Motion carries 3-0. We are in executive session. Is our time right?
You are perfect.
Good deal. Good deal. We are back in session. No action required. We return.